training was like 90 minutes long. This training is about 30 minutes long, give or take, depending on if you guys have questions. So yeah, let's get started. So, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about basically a guide on how to use our testing strips. I know it says fentanyl here because back in 2021 we only had fentanyl testing strips for distribution. But I'm very happy to say that now in 2025 we have testing strips for fentanyl, xylazine, and metamidine. Fentanyl being an opioid, metamidine and xylazine being a sedative that is invasive in our drug supply. We have seen increasing numbers of overdoses with involving metamidine and xylazine. So they were criminalized in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania for about 10 years. And in August of 2021, PA legislature finally passed HB 1393 in November 2022 to legalize fentanyl testing strips and other drug checking technology. This slide just basically shows the illicit fentanyl and dope supply that we have here in Philadelphia that we're seeing here in real time. With heroin, to the left, more common is like white and brown here in Philadelphia, white and brown heroin. Black tar is more common over like in the West Coast, like in California. And then we have the illicit fentanyl. And this photo is really to just show that it can be, it used to be very easy to be able to tell the difference between a real Xanax and a fake Xanax. And also, this doesn't just apply to Xanaxes, it just applies to opioid prescribed medications. And in this image, you see that on the left, it's a real Xanax, so pharmacy prescribed. And then on the right, it says fake. And the easiest way to tell is you can't really see the word Xanax. It's not very clean cut and it has kind of jagged edges. But I can say that unfortunately, like we're in 2025 and these pill pressing machines have become very updated, more modern. So we have seen that it is actually more harder to tell now between a fake Xanax and a real Xanax. And that's kind of where the testing strips come into play because you're able to test your drugs, whether it be heroin or prescribed opioids. And then to the right, we see trank dope. So it's short for tranquilizer. And unfortunately, we have seen over the years animal sedatives taking over our drug supply. Um, Before when this training came out, we were only seeing xylazine. And xylazine again is an animal sedative, a veterinary sedative. And now we have discovered metamidine last year in November of 2024. It first popped up in Philadelphia's drug supply, and we are seeing an increase in the invasive drug in our drug supply. Metamidine is stronger than xylazine. So to better put into comparison, uh, xylazine is kind of used for smaller animals. So let's just say like you want to put down a pit bull, like during a surgery or something. And then metamidine is more used for like elephants and rhinos. And unfortunately, like I said, we have been seeing an increase in metamidine and a decrease in xylazine in our drug supply. So over at the health department, over here at Super, we have about 13 different teams. One of our teams is the drug checking team. They do great work. So what they do is they collect drug samples that they find on the floor, so drug litter. And then we send that drug litter over to CFSRE, which is, I believe, I might butcher this, but I believe it's Center for Forensic Science Research Education. We have a partnership with them where we send over our drug litter samples that we have found, and then they send over a report. So this slide is really just to show folks that the drug can be very variable. So in 2022, in early of June, we were testing this one drug that had the stamp X on it. So if you guys don't know, it's very common in Philadelphia when you are buying drugs from different neighborhoods may name their drugs different things so that you can differentiate where did you get the drug from. So this one neighborhood had a popular drug with the stamp X on it. It was actually found on Kensington and Cambria very often, so we're assuming that it was somewhere in that corridor. So in early June 2022, we were testing this stamp, and we saw 9% fentanyl and 24% xylazine, with the potency index being zero point 0.9. And then we go to the end of 2022, and we only see fentanyl jump up 1% up to 10%. And then we see xylazine go down to 21%, with the potency index going to a 1.0. And then we tested it again in July, throughout July. And then at the end of July, we saw that the fentanyl went right back down to 9%, but then the xylazine doubled to 45%. So this slide is really just to show folks, specifically when we're doing trainings for folks who use drugs or folks who know people who use drugs, that it doesn't really matter where you get your drugs from. The drug supply is ever changing so much. So what I like to tell my folks, especially when I'm doing outreach and I'm encouraging folks to use these testing strips, is it doesn't matter that if you get your drugs from Joe. So if Joe is your drug dealer and he's been your drug dealer for the last 5 years, Joe is not the one who is manufacturing these drugs. He is not the one who is cutting these drugs. And unfortunately, the people who are cutting these drugs, they don't really know what they're doing because they're not pharmacists. They're not chemists. They don't work in a pharmacy. So they don't really know what they're doing. So when they're cutting these drugs, they're kind of just doing an estimate of what they believe should be like 50% this, 50% that. So the drug supply is very variable, which is why we encourage folks to please test their drugs when they're using drugs, and it can range between the heroin and also the pharmaceutical drugs, which are like the press pills and stuff. So this slide, and also you guys might see that a lot of these slides are kind of the same slides that were in the last training last week. But they all kind of just play a part into this. So claims of fentanyl contamination and other drug supplies are often unfounded. But there have been a few confirmed incidents in Philadelphia. So the way that a drug, and I like to say contaminated instead of laced, because implies that it was intentional. But what could really happen, and it happens more often, is that folks may be bagging up drugs on the table. Let's just say they were bagging up cocaine with fentanyl in it, and then once they are done bagging up the drugs, they will, instead of cleaning the table off thoroughly, they will. My laptop is not dying on me today. Give me 1 second. I am so sorry. Okay. So if they are bagging up drugs on the table, for example, cocaine, cut in with fentanyl, they may bag up all the cocaine, and then they may just place the marijuana on top of the table without clearly, and thoroughly cleaning the table off. So there can be examples of, cross-contamination. But it doesn't happen very often, specifically like when we're talking about like marijuana and other drugs. So it is very common to find fentanyl in the methamphetamine, fentanyl in the crack cocaine, but it is very uncommon to find fentanyl in the marijuana. But we have had some confirmed reports of cross-contamination, whether it was laced or accidental. But I can say that when someone is using marijuana and for some reason there is traces of fentanyl in it, there is an 89% chance that you will not actually be smoking and inhaling and consuming the fentanyl, because fentanyl does not survive under direct heat. When you're smoking marijuana, you kind of just have to light whatever you're smoking it out of, whether it's like a cigarello, a cigar, a bowl. Um, you have to put it under direct fire, and fentanyl just doesn't react to direct fire. It doesn't react well. So it was very hard to be able to like, it's just not very common for fentanyl contamination to happen in the marijuana. But if we have fentanyl in crack cocaine and methamphetamine, then it is more likely that it was purposely cut into those drugs. So here we just see a heat map of incident locations of the fatal overdoses where at least one stimulant and fentanyl were present. We were looking at non-Hispanic whites, Hispanics, and non-Hispanic blacks. I don't know if my mic cut out. Can you guys? I think you guys can hear me. Okay. So counterfeit prescription pills are increasing in supply. Some people are unaware, while others may seek them intentionally and to varying degrees. So again, back to that second slide that I was showing, that it can be very hard to tell the difference between a counterfeit pill and a real pill. And it is very common, especially in the Black and Latino communities, that it may be very hard to get a prescription from someone, like from a doctor for opioids, and they may be experiencing pain or unable to sleep or experiencing anxiety, and they may seek out other alleys and resources to obtain these medications. For example, like I know this older lady on in my neighborhood who she was receiving I believe it was Percocets because she had broken her back a couple years ago. Unfortunately, she does not have health insurance anymore. So she does regularly seek Percocets on the street, and I always do my best to try to educate her on how to use the testing strips because if you never know what you're getting unless you're getting it directly from a pharmacy. So I encourage everyone to please do not buy off the street. Please get directly from a prescribing doctor from your pharmacy. So, like I said, in 2021, the testing strips were legalized, and in 2022, they were finally ready and available for distribution. So these testing strips, again, we have fentanyl testing strips, we have metamidine testing strips, and we also have xylazine testing strips. These testing strips can be ordered through our website at substanceusephilly.com. When you get on that website, you are able, there is a blue corner up top that says get supplies or get training. Feel free to click on that blue tab, and it's kind of like putting in an online order. And once that order is put in, that request will get sent directly to my inbox, and then I will then pack your order, and we can mail it out to you, we can deliver it to you, or you can come pick it up at our office. And again, that's for fentanyl, metamidine, and xylazine testing strips. You can also order Narcan through our website. Narcan kits as well. So if you just want the whole if you don't just want the medication but you want the kit that includes a pair of gloves and face shields for rescue breathing, you guys can order that online as well. So when you order fentanyl testing strips, you will get an entire kit. When you get the kit, it will be about 5 testing strips per whatever you request. You will get small syringes of sterile water, and then you will get a small container. We call them cookers. But you can also use, like, if you don't have them or if you know anyone who needs to test and they don't have a cooker or a spoon available, the most common that is used is a water bottle cap. What was the link again? It was substanceusephilly.com. I will drop the link at the end of this training so that everyone can have. Yeah. So to test your drugs, again, you will need a testing strip. You will need water. Honestly, I don't really stress like the fresh or sterile water, because I know that a lot of our unhoused folks may not have access to that and will just use whatever they have. The water really won't affect the results of the test. Um, and then a small container. So, most commonly again is a water bottle. And you just use the cap from the water bottle. So step by step on how to use them. So if you have a water bottle, you want to use the cap, and again, if you don't, you just want to use something that can hold water in it. It can be anything. You just want to fill whatever you have with a decent amount of water. You want to go ahead and take your drug of choice, and you want to put just a little bit in the water. My best way to tell my peoples how to test the drugs is instead of using the cap of water or the container of water, I actually tell folks to fill the container up that the drugs came in with water. That is how you actually get the most accurate read. So for example, crack cocaine sometimes comes in little small plastic tiny containers. I advise folks to just dump the substance out of the container or the baggie or whatever the drug came packaged in, and go ahead and fill that package up with some water. But if you do not have the packaging, that is okay. You just want to use a small container with water, and then you kind of want to shed some of the substance onto into the water. So if you're testing a pill, I tell folks to try to shed off every edge of the pill, because it is very common that, let's just say a Xanax, you know, guys know that a Xanax is like a bar. It is very common for fentanyl to only be on one side of the bar. Because again, these folks who are manufacturing these drugs don't know what they're doing, so they don't know how to evenly distribute throughout the substance. So if you're testing medications such as pills, you want to go ahead and scrape some of that of every edge into the water. If you're testing crack cocaine, you want to go ahead and shed some of that into the water of every edge that you can. And if you're testing marijuana, then you want to go ahead and just get a small just a small piece of the bud and go ahead and dip it in the water. So once you have your substance in the water, you want to go ahead and dip the wavy blue lines into the water and residue, and you want to hold it for 15 seconds. It's kind of like in comparison to like a dollar store pregnancy test, where you just kind of just rip it out the box and then you just kind of just dip it in the liquid. It's similar to that. Once it has been 15 seconds, we ask you to lay the strip on a dry, flat surface, and then the results should come within 15 seconds to 1 minute. So a positive result will be one line, and then a negative result will be two lines. If there are no lines at all, then the test was invalid and you need to redo the test. Which is why we do give out about three to five testing strips per order. You can also order, so if you guys are part of a school or part of an organization or a club and you guys would like to distribute them into your community, you guys can also order them in bulk. When you order them in bulk, they come like in a box of 100, so you can ask for 100 all the way up to 500 at a time. But with the metatomidine strips, the limit right now is 300, just because they're fairly new and they're really expensive. So we're trying to just be able to make sure that everyone gets a chance to get metatomidine strips. So for fentanyl and xylazine strips, you can get up to 500, and for metatomidine, you can get up to 300 if you're looking to get in bulk. If you're not looking to get in bulk and you're just looking to get full kits, you can just emphasize that in the notes when you put in your order, and we can make sure that we get you the full kit. And also if you want to order kits, you can order up to 25 kits at a time if you don't want to like get the whole box in bulk. So this is an example of an invalid result. And this can happen if you dip the water past the solid blue line. It can happen by accident. Um, and invalid results may also look like they like the top red line closest to the wavy end appearing. And then negative results will always be the double red line. And then we always like to encourage safer use. So there's no guarantee. There's never a 100% guarantee that the test is going to give you an accurate result. Fentanyl may still be present even if the test is negative, because again, like I was saying, specifically if you're testing for pills, or maybe if you are testing substances like crack cocaine, and you only shave off like maybe a part of it, and we run into that often where folks who use drugs are kind of just hesitant about testing the drugs because they feel like they're wasting some of the drugs because they're putting it into water to test it. So we just try to talk to them and just let them know like it is very important. If you're really intrigued to find out like what are you consuming, just to be able to guide you for a better way of using, we do tell them to just go all the way around, but sometimes they don't go all the way around with the substance, and then fentanyl may still be present. It just wasn't present in the side that they tested. We always encourage folks to start small and use slow, and have Narcan with them and to use it with someone that you trust. Again, like I was saying last week, it is very common for folks to who use drugs to be under the impression that they can just Narcan themselves, and that is not true. When you are going into an overdose, you become unconscious and unresponsive. And there are no warning signs for an overdose, so it's not like I just consume the drug and then I get a couple warning signs, like maybe my heart starts racing or maybe I have a hard time breathing. It kind of just happens like as you're feeling the high in your body and the effects in your body, and then you just suddenly go unconscious. So of course use caution, start out small, slow, and always have Narcan. And then we're always encouraging folks that to never use alone. We do the never use alone hotline is still around, and the number is 800-484-3731. Unfortunately, the Be Safe Community app is not a thing anymore. I believe it's still on the Apple Store. But once you download it and actually try to make an account, it will say system error or code error. Um, so yeah. And then again, if you guys are interested in receiving these supplies, you guys can get them through the prevention point, next distro, gangsafe.org. Actually not sure why. I don't think we were giving out fentanyl testing strips when this training was made. But we do definitely give them out over at the health department. And I will drop that link over in the chat. And you can not only can you order supplies, but you can also request training. So if you guys are, again, if you guys are part of a community group, a part of a school, a club, or maybe you just want to have a training for your close friends in the community or your neighbors who are interested in learning how to reverse an overdose, at that same website that I will link, you can request trainings as well. Um, we have again the overdose training. We have a train to trainer training where that training is in person, and it's similar to the overdose training, but it's a little bit more in depth because we train you on how to train other people to reverse an overdose. And then we also have a harm reduction 101 training, where we kind of just talk about the principles of harm reduction and the roots of harm reduction. And you can request all of this at substanceUsePhilly.com. And unfortunately, again, these folks are not here anymore, so please do not contact these people. I will drop my email in the chat and my phone number as well, along with the website. Yeah,